Hello, friends. So good to see you again. So good to be with you again. I wanted to talk today about focus, particularly the importance of focus, the power of focus. But here's the thing that's always frustrated me about focus is obviously it's very important. Obviously it is becoming more and more important in this age of distraction. I am almost done reading my good buddy's Michael Easter's book, Scarcity Brain. Talks a lot about the scarcity loop, talks a lot about technology and how technology is distracting us and a lot of the addictive components of that. And I think it's only going to get worse. Like it's not getting better, put it that way. It's up to us to learn how to, learn how to overcome in this world that's trying to distract us. And the world is going to continue to try to distract us. And what do we do about that? And everybody says, you need to focus, the art of focus, the power of focus. There's all these terms around focus. Well, how the fuck do you focus? Okay. Because there's always something else that you feel like you should be doing, or in Amber's terms, in her, she started a Facebook group called To Be Read, the To Be Read Society, which is just, hey, there's all of these books that I feel like I need to read, and they just pile up in my to be read pile. And I think that that's true with books, for sure. I've got a big to be read pile. But also, I think that that's true just in, all of the things we think we should do. Like, should I go on LinkedIn? LinkedIn is a great way to generate emails. Well, I have a number of friends who are doing stuff on LinkedIn. Well, I don't know, is it magical? No, it's just one more thing. But how do we focus? And so there's a concept that I've spoken about in passing a number of times on this podcast that I feel like we never actually gave enough treatment to, and I kind of wanted to do that today and dedicate a full episode to it. So I call this the leapfrog effect. I just made that up. I feel like in order to talk about things on the internet, you've got to give your own names to them in order to own them. So I don't know if anybody else has ever come up with this or not. It works for me. So here it is, the leapfrog effect. Picture as if there's a little TM beside those two words or three words, even though TM means nothing. Copyright means something, trademark. When you see a TM beside it, it means nothing. It just means like somebody decided to put those letters beside that name. Anyway, the leapfrog effect. Because a lot of us listening to this are fitness people, or interested in fitness, or come from fitness, or work in fitness. I will explain the concept in relation to a fitness concept that I think a lot of us are probably familiar to, which is our bodies largely exist in something called a homeostatic set point, which basically means our bodies get comfortable at a certain set point of, call it health, call it fitness, basically operating one way, okay? And it's relatively easy to maintain that level once we're at it. Now, the interesting thing about this is that we can reset our homeostatic set point. It takes a large amount of effort to either move to a better level of fitness or even a worse level of fitness. I mean, maybe a lack of effort or much worse level of fitness. But you can do it. And as anybody who's gotten into great shape will attest, once you're in great shape, it becomes relatively easy to maintain that level, or at least a much higher level. But getting there takes a lot of effort. And there's a number of reasons for this. One of them just has to do with the physiology of muscle cells. So muscle cells are muscle cells are the only multinucleated cell in the human body. As you gain new muscle, you deposit additional nuclei into the muscle cell. Okay, so that's kind of cool. What does that mean? That means that as the muscles grow as you're training, the muscles grow themselves and you deposit more nuclei. Well, if you fall into inactivity for whatever reason, sure, your muscles atrophy, but your nuclei are actually still there, which means that the genetic material, or not the genetic material, the information, physiology buffs are going to kill me for how I'm describing this process. But what it means is that the information for the muscle to grow has already been deposited, which means that if you train, you will get back to that level much, much quicker because the body already knows how to get there. Which is why, side story, before and after photos are largely bullshit. Because oftentimes with a before and after photo, what happens is the person was already in great shape once, fell out of great shape, and then getting back into that great shape is actually much easier the second time. And it's not a very good, if you're looking at buying a product or service or something and somebody gives a before and after, you actually need to question whether that person was the first time that they got into that kind of shape or whether they had been in that kind of shape before. Side note. But what's particularly interesting to me about this process is that when you leapfrog to that next level of fitness, it actually takes a very dedicated, short, intense burst of focus on whatever that goal is to get to that next level. And then once you're there, you can almost put it on, I don't know, what's the word that I'm looking for here, Ren?
Cruise control?
Yeah, there you go. You can almost put it on cruise control. Thank you, MC Tuk Tuk.
Me.
You guys gotta get one of these guys.
Get you a Ren.
Y'all gotta get an MC Tuk Tuk. Y'all gotta get a Ren. But, so you can put it on cruise control. Not completely cruise control, obviously, but you can put it on cruise control. But it takes that very dedicated time and effort and focus to get to that next level. Okay, so that's with fitness. And that's why you kind of hate fit people. Like I was at a party, I was at an all-adult birthday party last week.
No way.
Weird. And it was one of our neighbors. Yeah, so you know how Allison does these like workouts in her garage? I think I've spoken about that to you guys before. So she's got a group of women that she get together in the mornings. It's been a bit screwed up this year with the school, so she doesn't have as many, but basically just like an open invite, no guilt. It's a one-way text message, so there's no like, tell me if you're coming, tell me if you're not coming. It's a one-way text message. Allison just says, I'm going to be working out in the garage this week, whatever, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Would love to see you. It's going to be at this time. Right, whoever shows up, shows up. And so it's one of the women there. It was her 40th birthday party. And so one of our neighbors, so a lot of our neighbors were there, people who we see at the park all the time, people who we walk to school with, that type of thing. But none of us had our kids. Y'all, I have no idea how to hold a conversation with people. I mean, these are people who I'm so, like the only time when I ever talk to them is we're interrupted by our kids every minute. It was funny. But we were it was funny, man. And we were out till like 9:30 at night and all like looking down at our watches like, oh, geez, we got to get home.
30.
Being old. But we're at that thing. And I mean, I'm the fitness guy, as I'm sure you two are. Like wherever you go, you're just like the fitness people. And it's not saying that there aren't other fitness people, but like often there aren't other fitness people. There might be other people who take care of themselves. But that dessert came, and I like my sweets. And there was a lot of sweets. And I had one everything. And there were comments, of course, right?
Yes.
We're sitting outside, and there were comments. And I feel like there's almost this... people get a little bit upset when they see in-shape folks eating things that they think that they can't eat or stop themselves from eating because they are, for their health, for their physique, for whatever reason they're not eating them. And it's because I work so hard for a very dedicated period of time to get up to this level. It's like, I know I'm going to have my sweets. Basically, you can put up with a lot more than, perhaps you otherwise would be able to. So that's the leapfrog effect. Now I want to tell you how I use that for business, how I use that for knowledge gain, and how I use that for skill acquisition. Because I've come to realize that this exact same philosophy, this exact same process, works beautifully to focus all other aspects of what we do. And I think it's for sure the best solution for me. It's the best solution that I've ever heard to this question of how do we focus in an age of distraction where every time that we do anything, we feel like in there's guilt around not doing something else. Mm-hmm. So I'll give examples of these three. I don't know. Which one do you want me to start with? Business, knowledge gain, or skill acquisition?
Business.
There you go. Agreed.
You want to start with business?
Yep.
Business.
Give them the business, John.
Give them the business. So I have a number of different businesses that I operate, and it's kind of hard to do sometimes. Ask Amber. I mean, I'm a scatterbrain, and I have a hard time organizing things.
And yet you hire someone like me.
Why do you say that?
Do you not remember? It still sits and stares at me. You bought me the book, The Checklist Manifesto, forever ago. It's still on my TBR pile. And I've taken that as a hint. You need to get your ass organized.
That's a phenomenal book. I remember reading that book. Atul Gawande. I remember reading that book, and so many people recommended it, and I was like, it's a book about checklists. I don't need to read this shit. But he's a surgeon, and he talked about checklists in surgery and checklists in the airline industry and how to use those things. So yeah, Amber, read the book. It's good. Yeah,
it's somewhere in the pile.
Yeah, it's somewhere in the pile. So what are the different businesses that I operate? I mean, there's the John Goodman brand, content platform, email list, podcast. Okay. Mm-hmm. There's the book that I'm writing. There's of which now there's external pressure to get it in on a certain date, and like a fair bit of money also to get it in on a certain date. There's Quick Coach, our software. There's my mentorship. And then there's like other interests, like other investment that I have and all the other random shit that I try to do. I have come to accept that I can only really focus on one of them at a time, and I generally give it about 30 days to try to like push that thing into the next level. So what that means is that when I have spare time, like I try not to book any meetings on Monday, Thursday, and Friday, for example. So those days are generally dedicated days to the one thing that is my focus at that time. Right now it's book writing. Okay? Which means that the other stuff I'm actually okay with not growing as much, like Quick Coach. Like I'm okay with Quick Coach just kind of sitting there and doing its thing. It is a phenomenal product. The people who use it are loving it. There's people upgrading to the paid level every day. We still have yet to market it once. And there will come a time where we will. And it's going to blow people's socks off and blow the roof off. But I'm not in a rush on that. And I don't feel guilt around not doing that because I've come to accept that at this point in time, this one thing is, right, my focus. I do it in 30-day batches, and I might do the same business venture or business idea for 30 days. Like I did one the last 30 days was Instagram growth, right? Was Instagram follower growth was my focus. Doesn't mean that I don't do the other stuff, but it's like the other stuff I'm okay with not growing and not actively moving forward so long as this one thing is. And I think that's the key. So yes, I kind of think about it in terms of different businesses sometimes, but you don't necessarily even need to think about in different businesses. Like within your business, think about all the different things you need to do. Maybe there's going to be 30 days where you really work on your ability to write and communicate. So that's going to impact what YouTube videos you watch. That might impact maybe a course you take that you actually do. That might impact what books you read. And you also might give yourself a challenge that you're going to write something every single day that's 500 words. Even if you don't publish it. And you're okay knowing that this is a skill that you're going to up-level and leapfrog to the next step for these 30 days. Another time you might say, okay, well, I'm going to try to grow my social. Like we hear about that a lot. People say, and I really want to grow my social. Well, for 30 days then, what you're going to do is, you're definitely going to post every day, but you're also going to network and you're going to engage with other people on the platform for like probably a few hours a day and build connections with them. And you're not going to feel like you're wasting your time because that's what you decided to do for those 30 days. Another 30 days, you might say, yeah, I'm going to get my financial side of my business in order. I'm actually going to learn about bookkeeping. I'm going to figure out how to organize my receipts. How many times, Amber, have we gotten the question of whether people can write off the Online Trainer Academy as a business expense? Like, if you don't know that you can write off professional education as a tax benefit, as a business expense, you might want to take 30 days. So what does that mean? That means you might call up or email your small business support center where you live. That might mean that you read a book or two about bookkeeping. That might mean even that you hire an accountant and bookkeeper and figure out what you can and cannot do. Speak to other people who are maybe more advanced in their careers and you say, hey, what are you doing with your... Like, how many times have we gotten that question, when Amber, versus how many times we should have gotten that question? Like, hey, I'd love to speak to somebody a little bit more advanced in my career that understands how to manage the money that comes in and out of my business. Are you able to put me in touch with somebody to have a conversation to see how they've organized their books? Have you ever gotten that question? I don't think so.
All I ever get is, how can I get more followers on Instagram? It's the recurring question for me.
It's the only question, right? Why do you want to get more followers?
What are the main three questions?
Because it'll get me clients. Oh, are you sure about that?
Right.
So that's business. I miss anything there? I feel like I talked in circles a little bit on that one, but
No, that's
I
clear.
hope the idea came across.
Yeah.
Was it? Good. Okay. I had a bit of a headache this morning.
Aw.
Took a Tylenol. Rarely take a Tylenol. Yeah. I told you that that I saw a doctor, right? And because I was having these like abdominal pains, and so I had to get a doctor because I hadn't seen a doctor in like a decade. So I had to get important. A doctor. So I went to see Allison's doctor. Accepted me, which is like, it can be hard to find a doctor at all. But she's way downtown, so she's way out of the way. So I went to do an initial checkup with her, which is always funny. It's just like, so everything good? I was like, yeah, man, I'm fine. But I'm having these like kind of abdominal pains, and so she sent me for an ultrasound and blood work and that type of thing. And I got the scary email from the doctor's office after the blood results came back that says, Dr. So-and-so would like you to come in for another appointment. And so what it showed was basically like all my blood levels and cholesterol and everything is like hot, like in the optimal zone, like everything's good. But my creatine kinase levels are high and my liver function's a little bit low. Which doesn't quite explain the abdominal pains, to be honest. We think it might just be like indigestion. But anyway, so we're doing another blood test to see where I'm not going to take any supplement. I mean, all that I take is like on average probably a scoop of protein powder a day, and then like 5 grams of creatine. Like, I don't do anything else. But she's like, let's just find a baseline, because she's smart. Like, she understands that people who are active. Like, she asked me, she's like, did you work out the day of the blood test? I'm like, yeah. Like, and now I'm telling somebody about it, so it counts. She's like, okay, well, so she's going to send me in for another blood test in like 2 weeks, where she said, basically, don't have any creatine, don't have any protein powder, like extra, right? And the day of the blood test, don't work out. Just to see what the baseline, like, levels are, to see if there's anything else. But yeah, it was just, I don't know, it's just funny. I don't remember why I thought about that, but
that's all right.
Okay.
We don't mind, John.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's just one of those like weird fitness people problems. Um, so the next is, let's do skill acquisition next. Something happened to me when I became an adult where I kind of stopped learning new things. And I wonder how common that is. And I don't think that it's necessarily a bad thing. I don't think that we need to learn new things, but I do think that learning new things as an adult, A, is really hard because our brains just don't learn things as quickly. Like, it's incredible watching my kids learn stuff. But also, it's like, in order to learn something new, most things that you learn have a reasonably steep initial phase. Like, I haven't picked up surfing seriously because I know that it's going to be like a few months when I'm basically going to get my ass kicked by the ocean before I can surf halfway decent. And then it'll be amazing. But I got to be in a state where I'm like, I know that I got to put this work in right now. And so I think about that with skill acquisition, of how much fun it is to learn new skills. And I actually learned a new skill for the first time in years. God, I don't even remember the last time that I learned a new skill. But I learned a new skill for the first time in years, about half a year ago, where I started just doing a little bit of powerlifting. I've never done powerlifting in my life. You know, cleans, clean and press, jerks, whatever. And it was the same thing for 3 months. The workouts were focused on powerlifting. Now, it didn't mean that they were pure powerlifting workouts, but like that was the kind of primary focus on them. And at the end of the 3 months, because it was that more intensive period, almost box, it's like, all right, I wouldn't say that I'm a good power lifter, but I can do it now after 23 years of lifting. I never picked up that skill, and it made me better at other lifts as well. So skill acquisition as well, to me, is not something that you take lightly. It's very difficult because it's another thing to fit into our already very busy lives. And that's why I think it has to do with this kind of leapfrog effect where if you do decide to pick up a skill, fantastic, right? But dedicate a very concentrated period of time where you're like doing the thing. When have you picked up any, like, have you like gone out and tried to learn any new skills in the last while? Like,
Heck yeah.
do it.
I mean, I did it a lot, man. This is one thing that I may have overdone in my career because of my interest in becoming an online trainer before. I mean, I was right there alongside you. I didn't know you at the time, but 2013, 2014, I was starting an online training, business because I started at 40 and I didn't want to stand up all day fundamentally.
Right.
So because of that, I went out and learned the Adobe suite of products, right? I learned how to do Photoshop. This was before Canva. Canva wasn't readily available. I learned how to do Premiere to edit videos and put captions on videos before there were any services that would just simply caption a video for you. And then just recently, I've been on a ChatGPT kick, trying to figure out how I can properly adjust prompts to make things easier to turn ChatGPT into an assistant, a virtual assistant of sorts. So, but I like that. I like learning new skills, man. I like to set aside time for it. I think one reason is because I know that it's teachable, right? Like
Right.
It helps me solve problems for students because I get questions every day, right? So that simplifies it for me. I can turn them on. And the other reason is because I never want to be. I know the skill will always apply to something else, right? When I was learning how to do Reels or TikToks, it wasn't about TikTok or Instagram. It was about creating an effective short form video delivery of content. So now when people ask me questions, guess what? I have a skill to do. Hey, give me 1 minute. I'm going to answer this thoroughly for you. So the skill, a lot of them are so transferable. I try not to get caught up in the platform that the skill requires initially. So yeah, I love the new skills, man. Just call me MC New Skills Tuck Tuck or Tuck Tuck New Skills. I think that's a better ring to it. Yeah. I like
did
that.
kind of the same thing, yeah, with Adobe. That's right, with Photoshop. But that was like 10 years ago. I don't even know if I
Right.
still use it today.
I discontinued mine. I mean, what you can do with a CapCut or a Canva, like I don't even know how Adobe stays in business other than high level professionalism. But I would never go through that process now when I can just throw a picture up in Canva and just say, "Hey, erase background." I mean, it simplifies my life.
I've used Canva as well.
Yeah.
Amber, anything for you?
Similar philosophy to Ren, right? Like I know I learn things very quickly for compared to a lot of other people. So when students reach out, like I'm constantly figuring things out to help them because they're kind of like in a panic almost by the time that they reach out about how to do something. And so their brain just doesn't take in that information well. And I can trim the fat and get to the core of learning a lot of stuff. I would say probably better than average. So that's a constant and it's part of my job, practically at this point. I am learning
Yeah.
pole dancing. So that's a new skill I'm working on. So there you go.
So why did you choose that?
I needed to get out of the house once a week, and I don't
Yeah.
like actually don't like traditional exercise. And so I just needed something different that would keep my brain somewhat entertained and to mm, work on some kind of personal hang-ups around like being in a new place. And it's weird because it's not in a room, like it's in this giant gym. And so, like, doing something like that when other people are working out or doing gymnastics or something else, like, I'm very private by nature. Even when I was a trainer in a gym, I don't work out in a gym. I don't like other people around me. It makes me really uncomfortable. And so, working on the being around other people in a vulnerable space, so trying to not take that so seriously in my brain. So,
Yeah, I did pole
I can
dancing
see
once.
that.
Slash, there was a pole in the gym, and so I just jumped on it and spun
That sounds right.
backwards. That was funny. And I looked at Alice and I was like, "So you turned on yet?" And she said no.
Nice.
That was a dark time in our relationship.
So, there's not a pole in your house, then, is what you're saying.
We don't have a pole in our house. No, we've got children.
It's a
So
fireman's pole.
we don't. It's a fireman's pole. Yeah. No, we don't. I mean, I never really understood pole dancing physically as
It's
phenomenal.
crazy,
The
yeah.
strength. It's a crazy workout. I never looked at a pole or like anybody dancing on a pole. I was like, that is sexy.
It's the athleticism.
That is what turns me
It's
on.
nuts how much effort it takes to do. Yeah.
100%. But how it evolved to be a thing that strippers do,
Mhm.
I don't know. I don't get it. Anyway, happy
Thanks.
for you.
I have no comments or 300. I'm
So
I'm
we're
gonna
in
lean
between
towards
there.
no comment so we can move to the podcast. Yeah, it's either
Yeah, let's
zero
move
or
on.
300 for me.
Well,
It's
let's get
either
to the last.
none
Let's get to the last.
or
This one is
full.
the hardest for me. This one is the hardest, and I think the most important, which is knowledge gain. Which is in this world where every single person out there is pumping new content at you every single day. And most of it, honestly, is just kind of hacked together shit. How do you... And like, it's just getting worse. I spoke to somebody before, and he's brilliant, and what he's doing is cool, but it just gives you an idea of just how easy it is to pump out so much stuff every day. He decided he wanted to get going on LinkedIn. This is a guy who was a big YouTube follower, or a big Twitter follower. And so all that he does is he takes his tweets that have the biggest responses, and he puts them in as prompts to... It wasn't ChatGPT, it was a different one, but one like ChatGPT basically, and says, give me a LinkedIn essay based off of this prompt. And it gives him a LinkedIn post, and then he goes and just like does a quick edit of it, and he puts up an essay on LinkedIn every single day. That's basically written for him. So, as a consumer of information, how do you possibly navigate this influx? To me, it's the answer is this leapfrog effect. It's this 80-20 rule where, okay, I have decided that I want to improve my knowledge in this thing for this period of time. Again, usually I go 30 days, depending on the subject. It might be a bit more than that. Some subjects it's been 50 or 60 days. But it's proved really, really valuable for me because I'm not trying to become an expert on the subject. Instead, what I'm trying to do is gain a good enough knowledge on the subject to be able to figure out where I stand on it and what game I'm playing towards it. And you have to have enough of an understanding because to me it's like, okay, well there's a lot of good advice out there that's not good advice for me. And I need to know enough about a thing to be able to figure out immediately what and who to listen to and what and who to ignore. And the answer there is not to say, are they good? The answer is instead to say, are they good / are they the same type of person that has the same types of goals and desired outcomes as I do? Somebody who is giving very good advice about day trading stocks. It's like you see people on TV or you see people, like Dave Ramsey or whatever it is, like stock picking. I don't know if Dave Ramsey stock picks, but like financial guy. Stock picking. And they're saying, Apple is a great stock to buy right now. It's like, well, for who? For a grandmother who's 82 years old, living in a nursing home, living off of the interest on her investment account? Or for the 19-year-old dumb shit investor who's trying to day trade a stock 20 times a day? Who are you talking to? Because I can guarantee you that Apple is not a good investment for both of those people at the same time. And so that's just one example, but it's an example of if you understand what game you're playing, you figure out what other people are playing that game. It's like there are certain people who recommend books where I listen to it. Where I listen to the recommendation. I buy basically every book that they buy, and I'm not going to tell you who they are because they're people who I have identified over time who my tastes in books very much align with. This is mostly for fiction. Whereas there's other people who a lot of folks really, really like who make recommendations for books. Well, I read a couple of the recommendations that they put out and figured out that I didn't like the same thing as them. Totally fine. So I've done this a number of times for different subjects outside of, call it fitness. I mean, a lot of them have to do with business stuff that I do, but outside of fitness, and then brought that in and combined that with fitness because if you think about what makes us valuable, if you think about what makes us do real money and have success in our careers, it's not being really great at a thing. You don't have to look very far past academia to understand that somebody who has the highest level of knowledge about a thing is largely pushed aside in society and not compensated adequately based off of their knowledge. Instead, the people who are adequately compensated and respected and trusted are largely the people who are able to combine some level of industry expertise with a whole bunch of other complementary skills that allows them to A, build a business, B, share information in a way that other people are going to listen and consume, or C, build some sort of product that's going to stand out and solve the problem in a better way that is not specific to one very narrow-minded way of accomplishing something. So I wanted to figure out, this is about 2 years ago, I wanted to figure out what I think about money. And actually the episode, that went live yesterday, Amber? What was that episode number? I went over it in detail. Episode 123, The 4 Big Buckets of Wealth Management, was the first time ever that I shared a lot of this. It's like, I just shared, and this was actually a private call presentation that I did to our mentorship, but we put it on the podcast afterwards. I shared what I do with my money. I shared how my corporate structure is organized. I shared a lot about how I think about money and how I think about wealth generation. And it is not a profit. It is not a financial maximization exercise for me. It is a family freedom maximization exercise, and it's a how am I going to sleep well at night type exercise. And a lot of that came about because this was about 3 months actually. I spent about 3 months a couple years back where I read as many books as I could on things like psychology of money. I mean, the psychology of money was one of the books, but on things like psychology of money, and also first-hand accounts of what people who understand how money works actually do with their own money. Because there's a lot of people out there who will tell you what you should do with your money, but they don't actually openly say what they do with their own money, and when they do, you realize that it's very different from what they say you should do with your own money. And I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing when an expert doesn't follow his or her own advice. All that means is that they understand the advice, they understand the best courses of action, they understand how to apply some of it to them, and not all of it, which I think actually shows true expertise. You know, I talk a lot about content and social media growth and stuff like that and how you don't need it to grow a business. Well, I don't follow that. I do a lot with platform growth because my goals are to become a famous author. And I'm giving myself years where I don't make a lot of money. I don't make anywhere close to as much money as I could otherwise make. Because that's what I want to do, right? So unless your goal is to become famous on the internet and a famous author 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, following what I'm doing doesn't make much sense. But if it is, then following what I'm doing might make sense. Another time that I did it was the artificial intelligence. Like, I have zero interest in using AI. I've actually never used AI in any capacity, probably to my detriment, but I've never used it, and I don't have much interest in it. I think people who work with me and for me, largely will use it to help me, but I want to sit and read paper books, man. like I don't even want to think about that. Like, I'm quite happy to do the very painful work of creating things from scratch, and then work with other people who understand how these tools work to amplify the work that I do. But I wanted to figure out, and again, this is a couple years ago, this is before ChatGPT, anything. I wanted to figure out how artificial intelligence and automation is going to redefine job roles, particularly in the fitness industry. And so I spent about 60 days and I read 7 different books. At that point, it was every book that had been published on redefinition of job roles, on what skills are going to be increasingly valuable in the world as automation and artificial intelligence kind of jumps up. And I could just bring that into everything else I'm doing. And then we recorded a podcast episode. Actually, Amber, do you mind grabbing that number? It was early on. It was like 18 or something. And so that's a lot of how I think about knowledge gain is, okay, what is it out there that I think is valuable for me to know? What is the angle that I really would gain from this knowledge? Not like, how do I use ChatGPT? It's like, now where does, let's scroll back a little bit, right? Let's figure out where this thing might play into what I do, both now and into the future. Learning how to use the technical aspects of the thing, I don't think is as important, because that's actually pretty easy and pretty quick. Like, you can read a quick guide at any point in time and figure out the technical aspects of the thing. And even down to like the way that the algorithms work, I think that there's going to be much more transparency around that. Twitter X is kind of leading the way where, Musk is just publishing their entire source code. Like, here. So once that's fully published, there's going to be a lot of articles and stuff on the web within a quick search that's going to say, here's exactly how to game the algorithm on Twitter. And I think that a lot of other platforms are going to follow that. So the specifics of that kind of thing aren't valuable, but it's like, same idea. I did this years back when I wrote my book, Vianomics. Why do people use social media? It was like 2015, 2014. I was like, why the hell are people using these things? It feels like it's making us dumber. And so I just went to PubMed and I read every single study that had been published on computer-mediated communication, on self-worth and social equity in online communities. just to try to figure out what's going on, knowing that if I gain this level of information in this very condensed time, I'll have an understanding that's going to allow me to navigate whatever is going to come out and kind of confuse me in the future. And so that's the leapfrog effect. It's the same general philosophy in how our bodies work and how I think we need to think about improving in fitness. I mean, we bring this into our mentorship as well. In our mentorship, we call it the 4 C's, which is content, conversations, calls, and clients. Right? Those are the 4 pillars of your business. Content, how do you attract people? Conversations, how do you engage people? Calls, how do you convert people into being clients? Clients, how do you take care of people? Okay. Well, you can't work on all of those at the same time. In fact, I don't think you can work on more than one of those things at the same time. So the way that we've designed our mentorship is to actually quantify where you're at with each of the 4 C's, call them each a lever, identify which is a priority, which is the biggest priority, and which is the biggest potential leverage right now for you to improve upon. Put all of your effort for a minimum of 2 weeks, sometimes we'll do 4 weeks, on that 1 C. Leapfrog it, get it to that next level. And then that becomes your new normal there, and then you work on a different C. And what starts to happen is these things begin to prop up one another in really, really powerful ways. And that's why people who work in a mentorship say that they accomplish more in 12 weeks than they've accomplished in the last 3 years. It's not that they were working any harder. It's that they were focusing way better because they were doing one damn thing at a time. Amber, what's the artificial intelligence?
So that's 17. And because I know everyone who's listening is thinking, oh, what's the 4 C's one? That's 41. So 17 is AI, and then the 4 C's is 41.
Okay, so 17, 41, 123. Okay, so if you're looking for something else to listen to, thanks for listening to this episode. I'm going to recommend 3 episodes because they have to do with the leapfrog effect and specifically I'm sharing like what I learned from, so you could spend 30 or 60 days studying this stuff and reading all the books on the stuff, or you could just like listen to an hour podcast basically on it where I'm sharing all of the stuff that I learned. And then, maybe diving into doing your own work and your own research. And I do recommend that for sure. But at least then you'll have a good baseline. So episode 17 is the episode where I talk about artificial intelligence and redefinition of job roles and different skills that are very, very valuable. Episode 41 is where I talk about the 4 C's more specifically, where content, conversations, calls, and clients. Those are kind of the pillars that you need to work on and the philosophy around that and a little bit about how we help with that. And then episode 123 is the one about wealth generation and how I think about money, what I think about when I think about my family's wealth. And I talk about exactly how my corporate structure is. I talk about exactly what I'm invested into. I talk about the real estate investments we have, the stocks. I talk about the cryptocurrency, and I talk about the fund investments that we have and why we do each one and how we think about each one, and very, very specific. So that's episode 123. So please have a listen to whichever one sounds good now, or all of them, or whatever. That's 17, 41, and 123. And I'm going to go get some lunch. And Ren, Amber, you guys are awesome. Thanks for hanging with me.
Bye-bye.
Cast out.